how do you think that that differs from the well-created and well-written male characters that also espouse similar ideals but that aren't female? Does that come up in terms of, do you think of certain male characters in the same way, or is it much just her?
I think most male characters don't have a message. Batman's message is,
I'm going to beat you.
Fight crazy people, and I'm going to beat you up. Superman's message is, I'm going to save the planet. The X-Men's message is nutty at best, at most times. Spider-Man's message is, boy, I wish I could make my rent and have a girlfriend.
That's really not, I don't think that's fair. I actually think that's why each of those characters has a specific message. I do think, though, it's sort of kind of a through line that can go through with that. I do agree with you 100% that what's appealing, at least to me, about Wonder Woman is exactly what you described. I also think it's important historically, God, I don't mean this to be tedious, but that those qualities are embodied through a female character, partly because I think, this is my own pop psychology approach to it, they would never be allowed to be embodied in a male character. Like, those sorts of qualities, which I actually see as really admirable.
Well, look at the one male character I can think of who had that same sort of message, Dove, from Hawking Dove,
right,
who's an object of derision because he's a wimp. And my own pop psychology of Wonder Woman, I think part of the reason why strong female characters in Wonder Woman appeal to Jimenez is because back before there were gay panels on comics and there were out gay characters, Wonder Woman and strong female characters, we were more able to identify with their struggles than we were with the straight male characters. So they were kind of the placeholders until gay characters appeared in comics. You know, because if you look at things like in Manhunter, not to pat myself on the back, but I guess, you know, the thing when I got the character, my edict from DC was I want to write a character who happens to be a woman, not a female character. I want someone who's flawed as Wolverine, and we can't do that with a woman character. I'm like, well, why not? Because women are just as three-dimensional and interesting as guys, and in comics we tend to see, and there are exceptions, we tend to see women as Witchblade or a creep or a villain, you know, or Dottie or Ant. So to have these three-dimensional female characters come out now, it's been really gratifying to see other people's work. And characters are able to carry books, where they used to just be a cute sidekick of the main superhero.
Conversely, I always argue that what's appealing about some of this is that, because I'm actually, and this might speak to my generation or my age, I'm one of those creators who's not so fond of the idea that this person just happens to be a woman, this person happens to be gay, because I actually think that what appeals to me about Wonder Woman is her womanness. It's not simply that she embodies all these things and happens to be a woman. Actually, her gender is part of her appeal.
Well, Wonder Woman, I would agree with that. Wonder Woman is much more iconic and much more of a woman part of her.
Her name is Woman.
But I'm just saying, I think what an interesting discussion debate about the creation of characters is they just happen to be. And I don't know about how all of you feel, but I know that, and I've said this before on gay panels, I actually think that being gay colors every aspect of my life, partly because, not simply in terms of sexuality, but the way, the example I always give is when I was younger, knowing that I was different, knowing I was gay, my relationships with people were immediately colored by the sense of, will they judge me if I talk about my boyfriend? Is that going to be a problem, etc. I think, or I meet other people and we all share this particular experience. And so I think for me to sideline that or just make that small doesn't really work for me.
I wouldn't make it small. I just don't want characters that are gay and everything else is subsidiary.
Right, but I'm talking specifically in women. If they could just as well easily be a man. That's an interesting idea to me, because it's sort of like, why not just make them?
That's not what I mean when I say they happen to be a female character. I mean being able to attribute traits that are found primarily on all the straight male characters, all the flaws and inherent things that are there.
Right.
They are sometimes not attributed to female characters or minority characters, because sometimes those characters tend to be more used as a purpose, as a diversity, than actually a conventional character.
Yeah, I actually did want to segue into Manhunter a bit, because it's very, very different character to write, I assume, than Wonder Woman, because Wonder Woman is actually, she has a lot of baggage, she's been around for a very long time, she's an icon as much as she is a person in terms of writing her. And I know that everybody, when they're writing characters, they're trying to humanize them and make them sound like they're people. But in Manhunter in particular, you have a character who is allowed to be a human being first, before having to fulfill the roles of being an icon or a hero, heroine, or anything like that. So, how does her womanness, in terms of the, I guess it does affect how you're doing it, because you're wanting to bring things to a woman character that haven't been brought in a significant way before. How did you approach like designing the character and putting things in? And did you ask yourself questions periodically, like, what if I did this? Like, is that what a woman would do? Is that how a woman would do? And did you just gravitate toward things that weren't maybe natural or
no, when the project was offered to me, it was right around when Catherine Hepburn died, and Catherine Hepburn was my favorite broad of all time, because she was, and I mean that in the best possible way. She was. We watched those old movies with her in the 30s up until when she died, and she didn't think she was a woman. She was that force of nature, which is where Kate Spencer, her name comes from, Catherine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy. And Prime Suspect has always been an influence on me as a writer, because I think the character of Jane Tennyson is one of the richest characters. If you haven't seen Prime Suspect with Helen Mirren, go out and rent it. It's actually a box set is coming out in September. Manhunter wouldn't exist without Helen Mirren. I actually might go that she's here this year.
Yeah, have you seen that trailer?
She's got a machine gun.
Oh my God! Talk about divas.
But it was interesting because later on in Manhunter, I did write Wonder Woman guest star in a 6-part arc where Kate represented her for the trial of killing Maxwell Lord. And when I was asked to do that, Wonder Woman was right writing Wonder Woman terrified me, because she's such a huge icon. And writing her opposite Manhunter actually gave me a great love and respect for the character. I think you tend to write characters off that have lots of baggage and have been around based on the reductiveness of our nature. And I just think I would kill. I know I'm number 400 on the list of people in line for that, but Wonder Woman I think is easily one of the most fascinating, underused and ill-used characters in comics. There's so much there that I didn't have any idea about until I actually started writing her. Hopefully someday she will be at the place of greatness that she really, really deserves.
I want to specify you wouldn't kill the Amazons in Paradise Island in costume.
I do want to
say you would
down
kill, and I just wanted to be clarified.
Paradise Island gets destroyed every 15 minutes.
Oh, look, it's back. Oh, it's good. Oh, it's back. It's good.
There's two that I wanted to make about Manhunter that makes her a very different character, and specifically woman, which is that she's a mother.
And a bad mother. That was important to me, because we tend to deify moms. And there are some people that just don't have an aptitude for it and have to learn it. And that's knowing a bunch of my friends who have kids Ramsey's age, seeing them be like, oh my, I think that was the only good scene in the awful Sex and the City sequel, where the two women are talking about, I don't like my kids sometimes. And I was like, that's actually, if we have an honest movie about that, I'd watch that for 2 hours to see this in their shoes. But, anyway, I digress.
Ouch. I just
Someone
want to
tried to tag it to Cape Ham.
So that's all the serious stuff. We're done with that. Now let's talk about Cam. So Mike Troy.
Now to the Cam. I think that Wonder Woman is appealing to gay little boys because she has a codependent relationship with her mother. She wears panties with stars on them. And she can tie people up to make them tell the truth. Sign me up. She has an invisible jet. She should have an invisible Prius or something. I don't know. It's just like, I think that little gay boys, I know that everyone else was probably more butch than I was, but it's like they see that it's okay to be a strong woman and you identify with the feminine side of that, it's like, you feel like an outsider, and women, let's face it, haven't had the best lot in life, so it's like to see a strong woman kicking butt, it's empowering to little gay boys, and so it was for me anyway.
I have a quick question just for the panel and for everyone. Do you guys make distinctions between the terms male and masculine and female and feminine? Like feminine and masculine as adjective, because I think what's an interesting part to me of this conversation, as we talk about female or male characters versus feminine or masculine attributes, that becomes a whole other discussion. It's probably too layered and too detailed for just a little kind of like this. But I do think what's interesting are, and I bring this up a lot, are how feminine, not necessarily female, but feminine attributes tend to be frowned upon, particularly in our heroes, particularly in America now. And I bring this up only in that many years ago, I was in the DC editorial offices, and we were talking about how we define the Justice League. Like, what was the one word, or what was the idea? Oh, I know what it was. It was Superman's the strongest, Batman's the smartest, Flash is the fastest. They were trying to figure out what Wonder Woman's thing was. And it's like, well, most compassionate, like there were various lists of traits that were not necessarily physical. And I was really laughed at, and they're like, well, we can't really sell that. So they decided she's the best classical fighter on the ground, but she's not flying because Superman would be better than Superman. And I thought it was really interesting.
That sums it up.
Yeah, the traits that I was saying, that sort of Andy had described earlier, that appealed to me about that character specifically, which I would qualify as feminine traits, were laughed at, discarded, were seen as weak, seen as not enough. Like, she couldn't simply be the most compassionate member of Justice League, because who wants to read about that? And they came back like, well, we were talking about visually and how to sort of explain the character visually. But it said an enormous amount, I felt, about how that straight editorial group felt about male characters, masculinity, what was important, etc. The other story that I bring up all the time was when I was working on an Orwell's War crossover with Wonder Woman, and the end beat was all about Wonder Woman holding Superman, because he was breaking down. This is right around 9/11. And the arguments, and I've trotted this story out a lot just because I still think it was so telling. The arguments about Wonder Woman holding Superman were enormous. We had to go to Jenna Khan and have her decide. Because the sense was that any woman holding a man was seen as weak, that Wonder Woman specifically holding Superman weakened him further as a character. He was crying because in the story, billions of people had died, and he just sort of, it was a sort of emotional release for him because he couldn't save them. And again, it was in the 9/11 world, so that sort of colored decisions. But the sense that Superman would ever buckle under this, even with his best friend, and especially to Wonder Woman, it was a big deal that it was Wonder Woman holding him. I just thought it was, again, really, really telling. The idea that your masculine heroes, they don't break down. Like they do not cry, especially in front of a woman. Or more importantly, the woman does not hold the man. Like, that's just a moment, they hated it. And I remember I had to adjust the art. His suggestion was, can you make it so he's on one knee so it looks like he's getting ready to launch into action? And so like I'm kind of holding him like this.
Just have her doing the man.
Right. So I bring this up only because I do understand the milieu we're working in and the genre that we're working in. It's, at the end of the day, it's superhero action comics, and that. But I do think it's really interesting how perceptions of gender and about these adjectives, masculine and feminine, what attributes are seen as weak and which ones are seen as strong, are fascinating to me, and I think they continue to color editorial decisions.
If people want to start lining up for questions, go ahead and do that. We'll take questions in a minute.